Our children are being thrust into the spotlight these days amid the raging clash of cultures. An element of consent exists for some, but tragically not for all. In Twin Falls, Idaho, a 5-year-old girl suffered a devastating assault by 3 Muslim boys who lured her into a laundry room and sexually assaulted her both oral and anally, and filmed it. The trial is over, and the boys received no jail time. None. Only probation, and the judge issued a gag order on the case. It's being called a travesty and another evidence of the lawlessness of courts that defer to the unjust influence of Islamic Sharia law principles and Muslim muscle in America. But some children are being victimized in another way, celebrated and publicized for their overt sexualization. For confused, neglected children, this might be one heartbreaking way to get an adult's attention. An 8-year-old boy in Canada is being lauded on homosexual sites because he identifies as a drag queen, and that is a male performer who is a female impersonator. 8 years old. It's agonizing to watch him being shoved into an X-rated adult world and filmed for all to watch. And his parents enthusiastically approve. Such extremes in child behavior usually have a baseline in whatever's going on with the parents. Parents are often losing touch with virtue, discernment, and reality. That is, and the responsibility that comes with parenting, a precious stewardship entrusted to us by God over small, vulnerable human creatures. We are too often messing this up badly, and so are our governments. Canada just passed a law where parents can lose custody of a child if they do not approve of that child's gender identity delusions. Look, life is not a joke, and we need to tell these radical bureaucrats, families get one chance. If you risk a child's well-being in body, mind, and soul, either through corruption, experimentation, abuse, or neglect, it's often impossible to repair that damage. The New York Times believes there are 2 sides of the debate on the gruesome Muslim practice of female genital mutilation, where parts of a child's genitalia are amputated. Some worry the case is stoking anti-Muslim sentiment, though cutting is not in the Quran or practiced by many Muslim societies. And some Boras who oppose cutting nonetheless feel the defendants are being unfairly demonized for a practice endorsed by the religion's leadership. There's nothing to debate here. If anti-Muslim sentiment arises over this, then if the shoe fits, wear it. FGM is always wrong. Those who practice it should be exposed and shamed, and it should always be outlawed and punished in any nation that honors women. But we actually aren't honoring women in America. As long as we sexualize them early, mutilate their genitals, indoctrinate some into lesbian practices, convince others that they should pose as males, and use others in sexual images to be enjoyed by debauched adults, and still other females are aborted before they even breathe their first breath. The explosion of child pornography and sex trafficking signals a level of depravity most of us can hardly fathom, and yet millions seek out and view images of children being abused. There are some things so wrong we cannot allow ourselves to get used to them. We must always be outraged over them, always grieved over them. We can never accept them as a new status quo. The drag queen assault on our children is one of those things. I'm talking about the celebration of little children in drag. I'm talking about drag queens dancing for our children and reading stories to them. I'm talking about children posing with naked or nearly naked drag queens. This is unacceptable. This is perverse. This is outrageous. It was bad enough when this stuff happened at gay pride parades. It was even worse when it started happening in our community libraries. But now it's entered our house of worship. As of June 24th, a headline announced, "Drag Queen reads during worship service as Cincinnati Church celebrates Pride Month." As reported, following the song "God Welcomes All" by the church choir, Davidson, who was dressed up as Spark Lay, walked up on stage and read the book Pride, the story of Harvey Milk and the rainbow flag to the audience. This story was intended for children, some of who sat at Davidson's feet during the reading. Yes, you ought to be outraged. It wasn't long ago that LGBT activists were telling us that drag queens were an entirely separate category, not to be confused with transgenders. Drag queens were flamboyant gay men who enjoyed dressing up in drag. They were hardly representative of the gay community at large. They were marginal, circus-like characters on the fringe of culture as opposed to representing the mainstream. Now here they are, front and center, and they're coming after a very specific target audience, your children. And you might ask, why do you have to keep bringing these subjects up? Why talk about them so much? I'll answer that. I'll stop when they stop. When the drag queens stop trying to groom our kids, I'll stop. Yes, those are the words of a drag queen explaining why he wanted to read to toddlers. To quote him exactly, quote, "This is going to be the grooming of the next generation. We are trying to groom the next generation," unquote. Well, not on my watch if I can help it. You say to me, "But you're a minister of the gospel. You should have compassion on this drag queen and want to reach out to him." I do. I care about him as a fellow human being, and I want to see him find wholesomeness with God and with people. Absolutely. And I do want to keep him from grooming the next generation to tolerate, let alone celebrate, men dressing as women. And that's also consistent with being a follower of Jesus and a minister of the gospel. I care about the drag queens and their LGBTQ allies, and I care about the children, so stay away from our kids. Sorry, but I've had it with headlines like this. 9-year-old drag queen is a hit on Instagram. As the story explains, meet Queen Kiki, the baby drag queen who is teaching his own teachers a lesson about gender identities. Keegan, 9, lives with his parents and brother in a Christian suburb just outside Austin, Texas. He plays football and video games, and he likes to dress in drag. He usually goes by the pronouns he, his, but his mother Megan describes him as, quote, gender creative, unquote. Now, this is not healthy. This is not right. This is not good. No amount of LGBTQ spin can make this normal or positive or praiseworthy. Another article reports, the dance music is thumping, the audience is giddy, and 10-year-old drag queen Lectatia is sashaying up and down a makeshift catwalk in a shimmering metallic dress. The enthusiastic crowd hoots in approval as the diminutive style phenom weaves between the tables of all ages at a brunch event, where the Montreal grade schooler is followed by 3 more big-haired preteen performers, each in varying degrees of glitter, eyelash extensions, and rainbow-hued attire. You better believe we should be outraged over reports like this. Activists have gone too far when they start messing with our children, and how terribly misguided are the parents who approve of such stuff. I've had it with the headlines announcing sick all-ages drag show had young kids handing bills to performers. I've had it with pictures like this, where drag kids are being exploited. It's enough. That's why I'm going to stay outraged, and I will not get used to these perversions. I will not sit back idly when our children are being used and abused. The Huffington Post ran a story titled, "Are Pride Parades Kid-Friendly? Parents say children can handle the kink." And on a recent TED Talk, the speaker closed with, "Talk to a kid about sexuality, teach them about consent, tell them it's okay for boys to wear dresses, let's spread radical queer joy." Sorry, but thanks, but no thanks. There are far better things to teach them and far better things to spread in this world. So let the outrage continue, my friend, and let the outrage turn into prayer, compassion, and courage, because this is happening on our watch. God can engineer impossible repairs, of course, for those who are truly repentant and for the damaged and brokenhearted who turn to him. But these days it looks like he is sometimes letting consequences be consequences. Maybe it's because we are grown-ups and we know better. We have been blessed beyond all historical precedent in Western Judeo-Christian nations. When things go awry, we have a few excuses. Abortion is the ultimate betrayal. If we discard the fruit of the womb, then God often grants our choice with the unwitting outcome of empty lives. So what's the cause, and where do we look? Well, we can first look at the Christian church. Yes, there's still a lot of hope, but there's also an astonishing amount of brokenness, compromise, and rebellion. And I'm talking about the adults. Children, they become the collateral damage. Let's face it. Even church-influenced kids see more trouble than ever. Too many become enslaved at an early age to base impulses, anger, ungodly entertainment, sex, gluttony, drugs, the list goes on. Of course, the good news is that not all households breed predators, deceivers, or addicts. But one trend is acting like kerosene on this fire, and it's the disposal of truth and the self-declared believers that are going along with this. A recent article on the Christian satire site, the Babylon Bee, perfectly illustrates the trajectory of fantasy. Man identifying as 6-year-old crushes game-winning homer in T-ball championship. And speaking of athletics, a freshman high school boy in Connecticut who pretends to be a female has won 2 state track competitions running as a girl. Folks, where there's no truth, there's no authenticity. Living a lie can get real old real fast, and shouldn't children learn first to honor and welcome reality? Yet we see another trend, young Christian heroes and heroines. Who has heard of Megan Rapinoe? Former President Obama has. You see him here showcasing his custom US WNT jersey. But let me ask you this. Who has heard of Jaylene Hinkle? Jaylene Hinkle is someone who has spoken publicly about her Christian faith and views. She has been outspoken regarding LGBT issues. On June 26, 2015, after same-sex marriage in the United States was established in all 50 states, Hinkle tweeted, "This world is falling farther and farther away from God. All that can be done by believers is continue to pray." Jaylene Hinkle withdrew from the U.S. soccer team after they announced plans to don rainbow gay pride t-shirts. Jaylene Hinkle cited personal reasons, but proudly displays Colossians 3:23 on her Twitter account. "And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men." Ladies and gentlemen, this young woman symbolizes the hope the Lord promises. That no matter how dark the night, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40:31. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep praying for our children and for ourselves as parents. I want to thank everybody again for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, God bless you and your families. Thank you.